Hello, everybody. Welcome to our pilot episode of our horror podcast. I am Tony.
And I'm Josh.
And we are
Creepin' It Real.
How's it going, buddy? How's your day so far?
Good, man. Good. Really looking forward to this for a long time as we've been talking about it, and now it's finally happening, I guess.
Finally got like our schedules together. We're able to do this first episode. This is really exciting.
I'm very excited, too. So we were talking earlier today, like we were doing the Evil Dead today, right?
Yeah. That's what I want to do. I want to like go through like the entire like series, like Evil Dead 1 and 2, Army of Darkness, the remake, kind of get down with all of those. If we have time, we can even try doing like the Ash versus Evil Dead series as well.
Yeah, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So, we kind of differentiate on a lot of different, horror contrasts here, which is why we're actually doing this. So I kind of got to start us off with, well, where do you find like the Evil Dead rankings? Like, what's your favorite Evil Dead movie?
I would say, if we're doing just the movies, we're not gonna do the series yet. I would say probably Evil Dead 2, and this is in like favorite to not as favorite.
Yeah.
I love all of them, but I would say from best to worst would be Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, then probably the remake, and then the original.
You know what? I'm right on board with that.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Honestly, it's weird. Yeah, we're agreeing on the first thing.
That is weird. Yeah, because this is why I was really excited to do this, because you and I, we both love the same shit, but we also disagree on a lot.
But this is kind of where we're disagreeing with this, and I know a ton of people that are listening to this are going to think this is absolutely the worst thing they've heard today. I can honestly do without the original Evil Dead. I feel like it's a different movie. As far as a B-rated movie, I kind of appreciate it as its own, but as part of the franchise, I feel like it doesn't even come close to the rest of the movies. Ash is in his own character. He hasn't even really hit puberty yet if you listen to his voice versus it's totally two different characters between Evil Dead 1 and 2.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing is that like, I guess they could have made the second one as the first one without even having the idea of the first one. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of is basically a remake of the first one almost.
Well, I mean,
really.
They did change a lot. And the thing is, too, is that they did really, the ending of the second one really did lead off the rest of the entire series of everything else.
Yeah.
You are right. However, I mean, keeping in mind that Sam Raimi, and his brother and Bruce Campbell were already making a bunch of films at a young age until he finally came up with Evil Dead. So you have to at least think of it that way, to being at such a young age making that first Evil Dead and then having enough balls to fucking put it up into a theater for people to watch.
Yeah. The Evil Dead original one for me is basically the whole franchise finding its voice. And like you said, they were making them at a very young age, and I feel like that was a great movie standalone. Like if it was a good movie. Let's go with good movie. But I feel like that was them finding their voice as far as where they wanted to go with the franchise. Mm-hmm. But I feel like they rediscovered it and found the humor in it and found the horror side of it where it blended so well with Evil Dead 2. And then it kind of segued into, Army of Darkness and even the Ash vs. Evil Dead series. So I feel like that by that standpoint, it does. But I feel like Evil Dead as original kind of just stands as its own.
Okay. Well then, how about this? Let's break all these down. Let's start with Evil Dead 1. For those of you that haven't seen Evil Dead 1, it's a campy horror film that a bunch of friends get together. They go out to a cabin to spend the weekends, and they stumble across this book. It's a Necronomicon. They find this audio tape, and they start playing it, and it starts reading out. What do you want to call them? I don't want to call them curses, but what's the thing that brings the Deadites?
Gateway opening.
Okay, yeah. I mean, they essentially
some sort of summoning.
Summoning, sure, that works. Yeah, the guy that wrote this Necronomicon book, he's talking about all this, and he starts speaking all of these different, a different language. Stuff that he's put together. Maybe I don't remember if he found the book. I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched it, but still, that cryptic, whatever the language being said out loud actually brings the demons to life in the woods, which then brings all the tragic horror upon
follows,
into all of them. So essentially, it's 5 or 6 kids that are all just getting terrorized by these demons, or deadites as they call them in the film, and it's just that old school campy horror film.
And it's as far as that campy horror film goes, it's excellent.
And I think you're right. As a standalone, if that was its own story and none of the other one else, like the rest of them, followed, and it was like its own thing, then you're right about that.
Yeah,
but
I feel like it just doesn't live up to the rest of the franchise. I feel like it's great as it is. If Evil Dead was its own standalone film, it would be one of those classic B-rated movies. But I feel like where Bruce Campbell and the Ash character kind of reached their plateau, which is one of the best like horror movie characters of all time, was reached in like Evil Dead 2 and especially in Army of Darkness. I feel like that in Army of Darkness is where it peaked.
Oh yeah, he was fucking dead on. He knew exactly who his character was.
Yeah, and that's where the comedy was at its highest and all that. So I feel like Evil Dead was kind of discovering itself. Evil Dead 2 kind of found a little bit of comedy in there, blended in with because Evil Dead 2 is my favorite because I feel like it's a perfect amount of horror blended with comedy. And then, Ash kind of found his character as, with the dialogue and all that, and, the chin and all that stuff came to light, through Evil Dead 2.
And it's really funny you say that because when they originally made the first Evil Dead, this was intended to be just as scary as any other campy movie like Sleepaway Camp or whatever else, in that same genre. Although I don't know if Sleepaway Camp was out when that first one came out. Anyways, so when they actually put that up in like the theater for people to watch, their premiere, people were actually laughing at it, thinking that it was intentionally supposed to have funny parts when they were actually trying to make it
a serious horror movie.
Yeah, serious horror movie. Yeah, exactly. So, reading up on it, I know that they were like pretty bummed about that. I mean, I would be too. If I made this film that's intentionally supposed to be scary and people are laughing at it, I think it's supposed to be funny, I'd be like, well, I fucking suck at making movies. Like, that blows.
Yeah, and I'm sure they were bummed, but I'm sure they're not bummed now because they have, like, seriously one of the most iconic horror movie franchises that have ever
100%.
existed.
Oh, absolutely. So then, essentially what they end up doing was just then Sam Raimi's like, well, all right, I'm going to rewrite this whole fucking story. We're going to do it all over again, which then turned into for Evil Dead 2, which now instead of having a group of friends together, it was just the main character, Ashley, a.k.a. Ash, Bruce Campbell, him and his girlfriend going to the cabin. Still the same plot line, essentially finding
Necronomicon
and the audio, and then everything shows up, and deadites happened, girlfriend gets possessed, etc. Although you got to think too, and it was the first one where Sam Raimi, very creative on the way he did all of his shots as well. Whether you don't enjoy the first one, but like the way he shot things and the sequence when it's the view of the deadites that are coming through the woods or whatever you want to call it, he was taking different pieces of audio, putting those in reverse, making his own mouth noises, and that's what gives that audio when it's just the view of the demons coming through the woods.
Yeah, and that's throughout horror, people have tried to replicate that, but nobody's been able to really do it.
Which is fucking
as
cool
effective
on
as
his
him.
side. Yeah.
And when you see a Evil Dead or Army of Darkness shot like that, like first person, demon camera point of view, instantly that's like an Evil Dead's shot or whatever.
Yeah, they're taking it from that.
Yeah. Which also, kind of brings us into Army of Darkness, where they got kind of a little bit more of a comedy feel to it.
Yeah, I think they purposely they wanted to go more comedy.
I think so too. That's where I kind of first got into the whole Evil Dead franchise when I was in my early teens. I remember that Army of Darkness was on USA back in the day, and that's kind of where I fell in love with, because the comedy of it was, I was kind of getting into the horror stuff. My, from an early age, I was into horror, but when you're a teenager, you're getting into stuff that's a little bit different, all that stuff. You're more into the comedy side of it, And I kind of fell in love with the franchise that way, and that's how I discovered all these past films, because I had seen Army of Darkness, and I didn't even realize that there were 2 prequels to it. So, I mean, but you can instantly see where the dialogue and the banter and the camera angles were coming into play at that point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they're definitely both have grown between Sam and Bruce into their own, styles of like, writing, directing, acting, character development, etc. I mean, and we'll actually, what we should do, so in the second one, before we get too far ahead.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to step back even one more to the original. There was a lot of controversy of when the girl is trying to escape the cabin and she's running through the woods, and the woods come alive, and essentially there's like all those vines that like strap her down to the ground.
Yeah.
And essentially it's kind of a rape scene, but with like the vines or the branches of these trees and whatever, which is a weird thing to throw in.
Yeah,
I guess shock value, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
I kind of gotta wonder what was going on there, where you're, debating over it. You're sitting around with a bunch of, people around a table, and you're kind of figuring out where they're going with this, and they're just like, how about we have this woman running through the wood? It sounds like something somebody would do when they were stoned. They're like,
Right.
How about we have somebody running through the woods and just getting wrapped in vines, and essentially, yeah, you're getting penetrated by vines pretty much all the way,
It's almost like that, like weird, like the Paname porn, like with like the octopuses, or like, I mean, who knows? Like, I mean, like what was it, like The Last House on the Left came out in like the 70s, which they should have fucking called another rape movie, or not another rape movie, like, I mean, we'll get to that movie on another episode, but like that I don't know, like I feel like a lot of older movies would have like rape scenes in them for like, and it's
the shock value of it at that point was just so existential.
Sam just wasn't going as extreme with it. It's not like a person raping somebody. It was like, well, it's demons controlling like the fucking woods, and throwing that out there.
And you had seen that in like The Exorcist, where she had been, raped by hypothetical spirits that were there. And now you're actually visually seeing it.
Right.
That she was being, tortured and, taken advantage of in a very dark light, as far as like, in the woods. And the woods were essentially what was haunting, everything that was going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were being possessed by demons. So, I mean, in that standpoint, it was kind of very, very forward for its time. And a lot of people were like kind of, probably wondering like, what is even going on here? What am I even watching?
Yeah. So, I mean, and essentially everybody survived, and then everyone lived happily ever after.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went.
Right. So, and then we're going to jump back into like Evil Dead 2. So instead of having the group of friends, it's just, Ash and his girlfriends. And he's trying to be sweet, and he's, which, by the way, he bought her this like necklace, that's, as like a gift. It's kind of like his like, hey, I really love you.
His promise ring of necklace sorts. Yeah.
Which, reading up about that, apparently, Sam just found it in like a thrift store. And he's like, oh, we'll just use this. I think it was like a little magnifying glass or like a little thing. Like, he's like, yeah, this would be cool. We'll use that. So essentially, the girlfriend ended up getting like possessed, and now Ash is now stuck in this cabin, fighting off his like deadite girlfriend and other demon shit. That's like the house essentially, the cabin essentially starts coming to life. Like there's like tools that are flying off the walls and like trying to kill him, and other things that are bouncing around, moving along. What about that scene where he buries her after he kills her? Then he buries her, and then he like passes out there in the woods, and he wakes up, and then his like girlfriend comes back to life.
Which is one of the best, like, I don't even know how they even did that. They did that with stop animation, right? Because that's how it comes apart.
It's
like,
definitely
to me.
stop animation.
But yeah, that, and then she does the little ballerina dance and all that. Yeah, that's
like
some...
her like corpse is just headless corpse, just like ballerina around, like dancing around the woods. But like, what I was getting to is that this is where all my lead-in was. So like, once finally the movie comes down to the end, Ash starts getting his hand gets cut or whatever. Like the deadite shit gets inside his hands, and he looks down, and he's got to either cut off his hands, or it's gonna attack his entire body, and he's gonna be dead. So that's when he, has to find the chainsaw, and then like, hold his arm down and take that chainsaw and just chop it off.
Yeah.
Which is like, how would you feel in that position? What would you do?
I mean, everybody always reacts to different things like that. Like, why don't you do this in horror movies, or why don't you do that? Why are you running into the house when you should be running outside?
Right.
And it's that different shock, I guess, is what they try to portray. Is nobody actually knows what they're going to do in that situation until it's a anxiety-ridden, adrenaline-driven moment where you're just like, you don't know what you're going to do. So looking at it from that standpoint, I don't honestly know what I'd do. Hell, I might lop my hand off. I might, panic and pass out. You don't know.
And that's what the weird thing is, because that's everything that's going through your mind right now is like, I need to cut my hand off so this doesn't get my entire body. But at the same time, you're going, can I fucking cut my own hand off? Like, this is fucked.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had to experience anything like that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
To be honest, that was probably the better way to go about it, as opposed to trying to use like a fucking any sort of knife you even had in the kitchen. The chainsaw seemed to be like a much faster process to fucking just
at least you could just drop it on your arm and just watch it happen at that point, right?
And then deal with it afterwards. So essentially, that's what leads into Army of Darkness.
Yeah, with the end where the tunnel and he gets sucked into the void with the car. And then at the end of Evil Dead, which is weird because the end of Evil Dead 2, ends in a different way than it starts in Army of Darkness. So essentially, like, when they come back to Army of Darkness...
The beginning of Army of Darkness.
Yeah, the beginning of Army of Darkness, it's a different movie.
It's kind of like... it's like a different ending for Evil Dead 2.
They're hailing him at the end of Evil Dead 2.
Right.
At the beginning of Army of Darkness, he's a slave in chains.
Well, all right, explain how that happens, though.
Yeah, well, he gets sucked into the void,
There's like
and then he drops into medieval times.
Like a time warp tunnel that's like sucking everything out.
And so essentially he just drops with the car at the end of Evil Dead 2. And then all of a sudden they think he's some sort of god.
Yeah.
And he's standing on top of the car saying, no, because he's not in his time, doesn't know what's going on.
Back in medieval times.
Yeah, and everybody's hailing him like he's some sort of king. And that's how Evil Dead cuts out.
Right.
Evil Dead 2. And then Army of Darkness starts, where they find him and they put him in chains. So you're just starting a new movie all over again.
Right.
Which is something we're kind of used to because of the way Evil Dead originally ended and the way Evil Dead 2 picks up. So
it's
for a third time, you're kind of starting over again.
Right. So then explain, like, if you want to explain the premise of, like, Army of Darkness.
Well, Army of Darkness is, Sam Raimi basically kind of did a reboot again of, what he wanted to do with the franchise, where he wanted to do a more comedically driven, with basically the same kind of, like, deadite characters.
Right.
And, Bruce Campbell being even more Bruce Campbell than we were even used to in Evil Dead 2. So he gets imprisoned by these medieval people. They don't really explain where they're from. You're in medieval times. You don't know what kingdom they belong to or who's a queen.
It's not like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's not like It's not like Game of Thrones.
Right.
So eventually, they take him and they sacrifice him to what they call the pit, where they open this giant pit in the middle of their village or whatever, and that's where the deadites they keep in there. So basically, people by punishment at this point in time are basically dropped into this pit and devoured by the deadites.
Did you ever think? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But did you ever think that it was weird that they made no mentions of the deadites just already existed back then? I never really thought about it until now, really. But
well, a lot of things existed too. I mean, when you listen to mythology and you read about mythology, and you kind of gather that they believed in a lot of things that didn't really exist back then.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
So basically, they kick Ash into this pit, and he kills, the giant dwarf, whatever monster thing that's down there. Kind of, yeah, exactly. And he comes up, and they believe that he's the savior. You know,
that the wizard, if you will, guy,
the Gandalf of the Evil Dead series.
Yeah, he's the one, because like when he got sucked through that time warp, the chainsaw happened to be on the floor with his like shotgun stuff. So all of that also traveled through, and
don't forget about the car.
Well, yeah, obviously, and the car,
and the car,
yeah. So then, essentially, when they were chaining him up and bringing him back to the castle, that Gandalf guy saw the chainsaw, and he wrapped that up in like a little blanket, like, I'm not gonna let anybody know that this is here.
Yeah.
So when he's down there fighting that thing, he like yelled down to Ash through the chainsaw, and Ash's nub, he jumps up. It was like a total like Super Mario move where he like jumps up in the air, and his nub, that the hand he just cut off, slides automatically into the chainsaw, which now he uses as essentially his other hand, which is how he was able to defeat, and which also built his character.
Yeah, so, I mean, they've been in fear of the Deadites, it seems like, from the movie for a very, very long time. So this guy falls from the sky, they shackle him up, they kick him into this pit, he defeats the Deadite that's in the pit that they kick him into, and they think this is the guy that's going to save us all.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's Ash.
Yeah.
So, by this standpoint, Ash is overly, is very sarcastic. More so than even Evil Dead 2. He's in like full-fledged Ash mode where he doesn't want to hear anything from anybody, very self-arrogant, very cocky.
Yeah.
He doesn't even want these primitive apes even touching him at this point when he looks back on the medieval people. But they're basically trying to convince him to go get this Necronomicon, which is the Book of the Dead or whatever,
right.
you know. And in order to liberate everybody in these medieval times from the darkness that's overcoming their village.
Right. And essentially also being able to send him home as well.
Yeah, which is an added bonus. So
yeah, I really enjoyed when that came out. I was when I saw it, I was really excited about it because, and I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but like one of my very first horror movies I really remember watching, besides Child's Play, we'll save that. But my dad was like, hey, there's this really cool horror movie that just came out, because I just started getting into scary movies. And he's like, it's called Evil Dead. So, like, him and I watched Evil Dead together. And then, like, when the second one, and this is back when they were coming out on VHS, you know, still just a kid. So then, like, Evil Dead 2 came out. And then when Army of Darkness came out, I, like thoroughly enjoyed it, especially as a young kid with all of, like, the cool action that's going on in there. It's not strictly, it wasn't just horror. There's a lot of comedy jokes, a lot that I didn't get as a kid, but, you know, still enjoyed as well.
Yeah, the Ash character as a kid, for me, was just like, I mean, basically adolescence, you know, in you know, summing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, cocky, arrogant, funny, cool, everything you kind of wanted to be as a kid was summed up into this one character, not to mention he was a total badass, you know, killing dead, you know, things left and right.
Right.
So yeah, as a kid, naturally, you're going to gravitate towards that Ash character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was funny, cool, and all that stuff.
And I think it was a really cool idea, especially since, like, he's already did 2 movies of being campy, and then they're just like, well, where do we go with this, like, third one? Like, what do we do now? And they really could have thrown him in, like, any other time period, but I think it was, like, the medieval times was actually, like, a really cool idea to have, and they pulled it off really well.
Yeah, well, actually, the one thing that they didn't have before that they had this time around was a budget where they could actually do stuff like do something a little bit outside of the cabin.
True.
Hey, we have a cabin in the woods. This is what we're going to do. Now they're like, hey, we have production value. We can do, you know, all the things that we wanted to do before, but they still kept the Deadite look, which was campy and all that stuff, but they did with this production value with everything going on around it.
Was that, like, when they, you know, towards the end, well, I guess really any time that they had, like, all the skeletons and deadites and shit like that, was that still stop motion as well?
No, that was actually, no, actually part of it was,
I was saying,
but they actually had a lot of costume involved with it as well.
Right.
The zombie in the pit, or the deadite in the pit.
Well, yeah, that I know, but like more towards like the end when there's like the entire army. So it's either like the early on like CGI, like whatever you'd want to, like the early special effects, like during that time, the technology.
Oh,
that
it
we
was very
had.
early special effects at that
Right.
time.
So
Yeah.
that's why I feel like that's what they had like towards the end, like when they had like the army trying to attack the castle, you know,
Yeah.
with like all those skeletons and shit like that. And I know there was a lot of costume shit as well. But like I was just trying to think that like if it was like, because obviously the first two had all that stop motion. Well, the first one didn't have anything to do, but the second one did.
Yeah,
The
and
girlfriend.
yeah, that's what they did with their production value, was they were able to do things like that. And also it was a little bit like, it wasn't campy anymore. Which I love campy horror films, don't get me wrong, I love them to death. But they were able to actually, you know, put these scenes together that were so much larger than they had previously done before. And all the costume value and all that, and the you know, the transformations and all that were a little bit more fit for, you know, the big stage, like the big cinemas and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really happy that the way that they did everything, and it's a great film all the way through, and it's something you can actually go back and watch over and over and over. You know, I've probably watched Army of Darkness more than I've watched the first two. Just like, it's just an easy movie to like, just even if you're just like fucking around your phone, computer, like it's backgrounds or just something you're like, I just want something fun to watch.
It's
You know,
a very
like,
watchable film.
yeah, absolutely.
That's I sum up a lot of horror movies that way, where it's a very watchable film. As in, you know, it never gets old. You could start it, like, if you happen to flip on the TV and it happens to be there halfway through, you're going to finish it, no matter what. And I think I got into that because of the USA thing, because it was always on USA. And, you know, I had probably only watched the thing, you know, at that point, maybe like 4 or 5 times through, but I'd watched it in parts probably like close to 20 times, just because I had turned it on and be like, oh, man, this movie's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you know, it doesn't matter what scene starts it, you know, I'm just going to finish it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when USA was doing all their horror stuff back in the day,
it was-
too.
right. When everybody actually still had cable. Now
Back-
everyone's just streaming everything.
I know. Now we
Yeah.
can start everything from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not a luxury we had back in the day.
No, definitely wasn't. So, well, all right, so when I was mentioning earlier, do you remember, like, what's, like, your first horror movie memory, but one that kind of fucked you up a little bit, like, as, like, a child?
My first horror movie memory, I'm trying to think. Child's Play's up there. I had some really bad babysitters when I was 8 years old, which was the year that Child's Play came out. And we have, you know, Drug Mart or whatever, and it was right down the street from where I lived. And it was literally like stereotypical type thing. I had a babysitter had her boyfriend over, we're making out on the couch, watching a horror movie. I just happened to be there, and we were watching Child's Play. So that was probably and I had a My Buddy doll at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I remember taking my belt and I was wrapping it around the double door, you know, closet that I had to make
Okay.
sure it didn't get me at night, you know.
Yes.
And I called my mom like a couple times, and she came in. Actually, the funniest part about that story is I called my mom after that when my babysitter, who was, you know, not the greatest babysitter ever, and I'm sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, is I called her, and I'm like, you know, babysitter's not here. I'm 8 years old. After watching Child's Play later on that night,
Yeah.
she drove her boyfriend home to somewhere else in town and left me there.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so
That's gotta be even worse.
I don't know exactly what happened at that point, but my mom's not a very, you know, understanding person, as most people wouldn't be when they leave their child home at 8 years old for, you know, even when I'm that young, it seems like 10 minutes is like 3 hours, you know?
Yeah.
But I called her at that point, and that's when she came home and found that the Child's Play VHS was in the VCR.
Right.
And she was kind of like, what the fuck was going on here? I remember like her sending me to my room, and I could hear her yelling at the babysitter in the other room. And of course I still had my belt wrapped around the door.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, at that point. Other than that, Earliest horror movie moment I remember was watching Friday the 13th Part 6 with my grandmother.
Okay.
That was even prior to that.
And if I remember correctly, 6, the one where it ends where like on the boat where they have like the chained around his neck and they drop the rock down the bottom of the lake.
That's the one.
Okay. So like that's just like an earliest like.
That's the earliest horror movie memory that I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
But traumatizing, definitely Child's Play. I think it was everybody in our age group because we all had My Buddy dolls.
Well, that's where I'm about to get to as well because my earliest horror movie was. I mean, I don't know. I know I was really young, like maybe like 5 or 6 or something, and I was going to stay the night at my cousin's house, and I remember being in the kitchen with my cousins, and we're like coloring, right? And my aunt's in there like making food or snacks or whatever, and I show my aunt like my drawing or coloring that I had, and she's like, "Oh, that's great." She's like, "Go show your uncle," and he's in the living room watching Child's Play. My uncle was like a huge drunk, so I like went over there and I was like, "Hey, check out this, coloring that I did." He's like, "Oh, it's cool." He's like, "Here, come sit up here on the couch and watch this movie with me." So I'm like, "Okay." I'm like sitting there on the couch and I was like, "What is this?" I'm like, "Oh man, this is really scary." And I'm just seeing fucking Chucky running around and like killing people and all this shit. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go." And he's like, No. He's like holding me down. He's like, "You gotta watch this. This is really great." I'm like this like little kid being held down to like
parenting at its best. Yeah, right there,
making me fucking watch this movie, and I was like, "This is fucked." So when I went home, I also had a My Buddy doll, and my bedroom had like one of those like bench windowsills, and I went in there, and My Buddy is just sitting there up against the window looking at me, and I was like, "Fuck this shit." So I fucking ran in there, I took My Buddy doll, threw it out into the hallway, shut the door, went to bed. My mom, like the next day, she's like, "Why was your My Buddy doll out there?" So I told her what happened. So then she's like, "Oh, jeez," and of course she like bitched out like my aunt and uncle, because like my aunt was like her sister, so like drunkle, that's he was he was in by marriage, but like, so then she like would tell him like my dad and my uncle about it, whatever. And I remember like a week or so later, I was out at a friend's house or something, and I come home, and my uncle thought it'd be funny to fucking hang my Buddy doll by the neck off of the ceiling fan in my bedroom. So when I fucking came home, opened up the door and saw him hanging there, I like freaked the fuck out, dude. And my mom started screaming at my dad, screaming at my uncle. Like, it was a whole fucking thing. I was like, "Yeah, fuck My Buddy. Don't want that shit anymore."
Yeah, so equally as traumatizing, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being trapped in a house while your babysitter's gone with your My Buddy doll. Because you're not actually watching Chucky kill people at this point. You're watching a My Buddy doll at this point.
Oh, yeah. Your imagination's going, "Fuck, I have one of these at home."
Yeah.
Just waiting for me to, or...
Andy's scenario is playing out in my head right now.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just literally, going through it.
So I remember as I started getting older, I remember like watching like Friday the 13th. I'd be laying on the couch on my belly, and the couch is like facing the direction of the TV, and my parents would be on the other couch. So I'd be fine watching the movie, but as soon as Jason would come on, I would tuck my head down below like the arm of the couch, so I didn't actually have to see Jason. And then once all the scary music went away, then I'd tuck my head back up and finish watching the movie.
Yeah, so it's a different experience for me. I mean, like, back in the day, I don't know if it was, my grandmother was kind of, we always kind of watched like the sci-fi and the Star Trek and all that stuff. So when I was doing that, we were watching Friday the 13th, which, USA on Friday the 13th was playing everything at this point. Every beginning to end, every Friday the 13th I used to think that stuff was cool back in the day. And that kind of, was like the gateway for me to be into horror as much.
Right.
My grandmother was heavily into that stuff, so I got, at 6 years old, I was exposed to it.
It's really funny. My grandma, she's full Italian off the boat, barely speaks English, and she fucking loves horror movies. Like the, is it called Dead End? Where like, I think that's one of like the horror movies where like, it's like super gory, or, Wrong Turn.
Wrong
Turn. Those are like her favorite.
Yeah.
Which if you saw my grandma, she's like 4'10", you know, like this cutest old lady, but she loves all of the crazy hillbilly gore shit that's going on in those movies. I'm like, this is fucking bizarre.
And you know, when you're that young, you basically watch whatever they watch. You know, at that point.
Yeah. I mean, Wrong Turn wasn't out during that time, but she always enjoyed horror movies as well, as you were saying.
But yeah, so, you know, going with that, you know, back in the day, my mom used to read all the Stephen King, like, books and all that stuff. She's not into it as much as she used to be anymore. I don't know if she grew out of it and, you know, whatever got out of it. But I remember looking at all those horror movie covers and just being like, wow, that stuff is so cool. So I can never really remember a point in time where I didn't like the genre of horror. A lot of people grow out of it, but I never really did.
I didn't either. It's still my absolute favorite. You know, I still watch them, and I'll watch them by myself. People are like, "There's no fucking way I can watch horror movies by myself." I'm like, I do it all the time. Like, it's just so fucking great to watch.
Yeah, we used to when we were 13. We used to have a movie gallery down the street. And we'd have my friends and I, probably, you know, my buddy Mark, my buddy Chris, we would
movie
walk...
gallery as in, like, it was like
a movie that was a movie store, a VHS,
like Blockbuster.
A place, for those who aren't caught up, where they used to rent videotapes live in person. And you would take them home and put them in the VCR. But we would go down and we'd go pick up 2 movies in the afternoon, and we had this dark basement, you know, fully furnished. We would sit on the couch, you know, and snack all day, and we'd watch, you know, Scarecrow, you know, all these 80s horror movies, and then we would go, well, we'd finish those, what do we do? In the same day, we'd go walk, you know, 10 minutes down the road, and we would go return them and rent, you know, 2 more.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah, we'd do it like 3 times every single Saturday, Sunday, you know? That was basically what we did, and that was how I got into all that 80s horror.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean... Giant Eagle was right next door, you know, you basically...
Rini Rigo's?
Rini Rigo back in the day, yeah, Rini Rigo. We used to walk up there, get our snacks, and, you know, our 2 VHS tapes, walk all the way down, snack out, and be like, oh, we're done. What do we do at this point? You know, most people would just go rent, like, 6 horror movies. We would just be like, well, you know, we didn't think it would take that short a time. We just go walk right back down and go rent something else, yeah,
I mean, like... That's what I was saying, like, my dad showed me Evil Dead, and I started getting into, like, you know, then, like, figuring out, I was like, I don't really have to be scared of Jason. I started watching through all the Friday the 13th, and then, like, Nightmare on Elm Street, I started really getting into those. I really enjoyed Freddy's character. Still to this day, the 4th one is my favorite.
That's the Dream one, right?
3 is Dream. Yeah, Dream Warriors is 3, and then the 4th one is the one where, like, I forget the name of that one, but that's the one where, like, there's, like, the badass chick, and, like, when she's, like, working out, he pretty much, like, turns it into, like, a roach motel.
Yeah,
and then he's like in that pizza parlor, and he lifts up the shirt, and, like, all, like, the souls are coming out of his chest, and, like, I remember watching that movie multiple times as a kid. You know, I was like, this one, and still to this day, I still enjoy that one, like, because I rewatched the entire series like about a year or so ago, and still I'm like, this still holds up. I still love this one the most.
See, and I'm gonna lay some on you here. I'm not a fan of Freddy Krueger. That's
fine, because I'm not a fan of Halloween, and this is where we differentiate.
I love Halloween.
Yeah. But I remember also on one occasion when Scream came out. My dad...
Scream when I was in middle school was like the movie.
Yeah. Oh, it was definitely the movie during for its time. Absolutely. And that started a whole new like slasher style of, you know, like of other movies to come, like, you know, what you did last summer and so forth after that.
Urban Legend.
I was literally just thinking of that movie. But I remember my dad renting it from Blockbuster or whatever else we had around during that time.
Well, teen slashers, like when you're going into your teens, were like the thing back in the day, you know? Like these were kids that were like 4 years ahead of my time, were, you know, in the same genre as I was. So I was like kind of looking up to these characters at that point, you know, as in like they were people I idolized almost, where they were, you know, this is what I'm going to be, you know, when I grow up.
Yeah.
And they were in these scenarios where, you know, I'd appreciated horror for so long that I was kind of like really into it.
And what's funny too is that as much as like,
And I loved Nev Campbell back in the day.
oh my God, Nev Campbell was such a babe, and even Jennifer Love Hewitt when fucking I Know What You Did Last Summer came out. But what's funny is that we make fun of, like the newer horror movies were like they're kind of shitty and whatever. But think about how long teen slasher movies have been around for, and every generation that's grown up with them. Like our parents had, all those, and then we had fucking Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legends, and then the people like the kids now have like Happy Death Day and so forth. So it's funny how that genre of teen slashers is always going to be around, whether the older we get and we're like these are really shitty compared to what we used to watch. Could be true, but it could also just be that we're older and we're just like kind of looking down on them.
Yeah, I kind of find an appreciation for it, and I guess it goes by by decade, almost by
100%,
what you're
yeah.
into at that point, because I kind of look down at it as the characters that I cannot relate to at some point.
Right. That's what I'm saying is now that we're getting older, it's exactly. We're not relating to it. It's just, all right, here's a new slasher teen flick. Yeah, I'll watch it.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Whatever.
But the Scream thing, real quick, was like my dad rented the movie, and that we were watching it. He was laying down on the couch. I'm sitting on the floor watching it. I was like really getting into it, and I had to probably be like 7 or 8 at this time. And I'm like, man, this is getting really fucking scary. And I'm excited and scared all at the same time. And I remember like something crazy happened in the movie, and I turned around to look at my dad. Fucking snooze fest. Sawing logs there on the couch, man. I'm like, fuck. Now I got to watch this movie all by myself.
Well, and the one thing they always forget about, and nobody ever relates to, is the fact that Scream really created like the horror movie twist storyline, where you didn't know what was happening at that point in time, where you didn't know who the killer was, and then it seemed like after that, all those horror movies after that had that twist storyline to it, where you didn't know what was going to happen. Where it's Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, what was going to happen at the end.
Right. Well, the thing is, Wes Craven did Scream.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just some like new fucking director or whatever that's
just
coming
decided to
doing
be so innovative at that moment.
He knew what he was doing, and to put those fucking twists in, and for Scream to have, oh, it's not one person, it's multiple killers that were fucking in on it, and that's how they're able to get around and so forth. Okay, we are going to take a quick break. Be right back.
Shop smart, shop S-Smart. Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. I got news for you, pal. You ain't leading but 2 things right now. Jack and shit. And Jack left town. See this? This is my boomstick! Yo, she-bitch. Let's go. Groovy.
And we are back. Hope you enjoyed that few little seconds there during our break. Since we were just talking about the Scream thing, while we were taking that break, I just thought of another story. Probably about the same time around that Scream happened, I was being babysat by my uncle. And he's on the couch. I'm on this like little kind of recliner chair thing, but like laying in it sideways, like arm to arm, what I'm saying? Like heads rest on one, your legs are hanging over the other arm.
Yeah.
And we're flipping through channels. Oh, guess what movie's about to start? It. Cool. All right. I'll watch this movie. So I'm now watching this movie with my uncle and all the scary... No, different one. Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah, not that drunkle. Yeah, I don't even... That guy's probably dead on heroin by now. Who knows? I haven't seen that guy since I was probably like a young child.
Wow, that went dark.
No, this is actually like my mom's brother. So we were watching It. I remember being like, fuck, this movie's getting really scary. And I remember like looking back, here we go again. Uncle Eddie fucking sawing logs. I'm like, man, this sucks. And I'm just sitting there watching. I watched the movie all the way to the end, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go upstairs in my bedroom and go to sleep. I'm just going to sleep right here on this recliner. And then probably for like 2 weeks after that, every time I took a shower, I would fucking like stare at the drain the entire time and like be in and out of the shower in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, same here.
And if those of you that haven't watched It, Pennywise the clown. There's a scene where the one kid, his mom essentially makes him think that he's like allergic to everything. So after gym, the gym teacher's like, you need to go take a shower. And he goes and he waits till all the kids are out. Then he goes and showers by himself. So while he's in the school gym room shower, Pennywise comes up out of the drain, like spreads it open, comes out and starts like fucking with him. So after watching that, you know, being like 9-10 years old, I was in and out of that shower in like 30 fucking seconds, like staring at the drain while I was like washing my hair and I'm like, done, out, fuck this, I'm not getting caught up in here when Pennywise shows up.
I always feel like that, you know, the same thing Jaws did for water is what Pennywise did for clowns.
Oh, 100%.
You know, like, ever since, you know, I was a younger person, you know, younger teen, you know, early, you know, pre-adolescent, I would always remember, I'm still, even to this day, afraid of open water because of Jaws.
Okay.
But people are irritated by clowns, and, you know, they don't like clowns, whether they're scared of them, irritated by them, or what.
Right.
I feel like Pennywise did the same thing for that.
Yeah, I don't have any fear of clowns. I really don't have any fear of really anything that any horror movies really brought to me.
What about arachnophobia?
You know what? When I was younger, I was. Like, when I was like a teenager, I'm like, fuck that. Spiders are fucked. Fuck you. Smash every fucking spider I'd see. Like, if I had a fucking, like, a hairspray and a lighter, I'd fucking burn my house on accident just trying to torch that fucking spider. It wasn't until about... I'd say roughly about 10 years ago, my buddy lived in this duplex, and him and his girlfriend, there's two dudes that moved in downstairs, which is actually one of my really good buddies to this day, and he used to actually live in this house for like 7 or 8 years before I moved in. But they had like a fucking, essentially like they had so many fucking pets and shit there in the house, and I don't mean like dogs and cats, I mean there was like scorpions, tarantulas, like all kinds of different fish, like
all sorts of shit you wouldn't
bearded
like
dragons,
be creeping on you.
Yeah, all that shit. So like they're having like a house party. They lived in a duplex, so they just both left their doors open, and you can go hang out upstairs, downstairs, or the basement. There's just a full fucking house party going on. And I remember I got my beer in my hand, and I'm like cool guy leaning on like the entranceway from like the kitchen to the dining room, talking to somebody, and my buddy, he comes up and he just puts the fucking tarantula on my chest. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? He's like, what? And I go, take this thing off. He's like, you're fine. I go, take it off of me right now. He's like, dude, settle down. You're fine. It's not going to do anything. I go, I have my hand up and I go, you literally have 3 seconds before I smack your fucking spider off my chest. 1? Like, it's like a mom kind of the kid. Get over here right now. You got 3 seconds. 1, 2, and then he's like, all right. So then he fucking takes the spider off of me, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, man? You can just go put spiders on people? Like, what the fuck's your problem? And then my buddy Timmy's like, all right. He's like, can I hold it? He's like, yeah, sure. So I see my buddy Timmy like holding it and playing around with it. So I asked my buddy Ian, I go, hey, if it like bites me or whatever, like what's the worst that can happen? He's like, you might get like a little rash. That's it. And then
it'll hurt like hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be sore. Yeah, sure. But I'm like, I kind of became infatuated with it, and I was like, it's kind of neat. So I was like, okay, let me hold it. So then I was like holding it, and I was sitting down at the table, and it would like crawl up my arm, it'd hang out on my shoulder, it'd walk across my back, come down the other arm, and I have like a picture of me actually like posing like this. Those of you obviously can't see, I have my elbow pointed up in the air, but it's just sitting right here on my elbow, and me like just looking up, like making a funny face to the camera. Since then, spiders, yeah, I don't give a fuck anymore. Really? Actually, to be honest, when I was working at my last job, all the spiders that came into our office, the one lady would freak out. And I'm like, no, don't fucking kill it. I would go and take like a piece of paper, scoop the spider up, take it outside. Yeah.
No, the only time I'm here around spiders is when I've been drinking. I used to have a pet tarantula that I inherited from my ex's little brother because her mom didn't want the kid to have a tarantula in the house or whatever. She was freaked out by spiders, as most people are. And I would get home wasted at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would poke it to bite me. Like, oh, dude. And I was just like, dumbest thing ever, and it bit me once. And it hurt like hell. I was like, why did I do this to myself? Why am I here right now? And like I decided, liquid courage in me, and I'm like, hey, move, do something, eat this cricket or whatever. And I
Pissing
was
it off.
literally antagonizing this tarantula. So since then, I'm afraid of spiders. So yeah, it bit the hell out of me, and it does fucking hurt.
Okay, so you actually still have that fear.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
That fear is definitely still there. And I think it's more or less been, reinvented itself since that moment, because, yeah, I thought I was very tough at that time, and that moment I found out that I was not very tough.
Now, will you watch any horror movies that have to do with spiders to this day?
I will. It doesn't get to me like that, and I'm kind of on board with I'll kill a spider if it's in, even in in the same room as me, whatever. That kind of irks me a little bit, or irks me a little bit.
You won't let it go. Like if you see one like up on the wall or in the corner, like you're hanging out in your living room, you see one up in the corner, like you have to take it down or you can't sleep.
I'm trying to change, but yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, they're honestly like, I mean, I understand like the fear behind spiders 100%, but in reality, they're not even trying to fuck with you. Like they're just doing
not
their
up
own
here
thing.
anyway. My buddy lives in California, and he's got black widows that are in his
Okay.
trash. you
Sure.
know?
Okay, that's a different game.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
not
a
here
totally
in
different game than
Cleveland,
in Northern Ohio.
Yeah, we're not having to worry about that kind of shit. I mean, it's funny you telling me that story because at that same house I was talking about, that same night, my buddy had a scorpion, and my buddy Timmy stuck his hand in the tank and was like poking it in the back, and when he went to lift his hand up, the scorpion actually flung its tail out and tried to sting him, but it fucking hit his fingernail and bounced off. And I was like, you're so lucky that it bounced off your fucking fingernail instead of actually hitting your finger. But also, again, we were all hammered, and he was just doing like, hey, scorpion.
Yeah,
what's up?"
that's how my incident happened. I was like, hey, do something. I was like flicking it with my
Yeah.
hand, like, hey, do something. Eat this cricket. You sit here all day and don't do anything. Do something for my entertainment. And it was like, oh, fuck, yeah, really? Yeah, really? You want me to do something for your entertainment, huh? And it fucking bit me, dude. Fucking hurt like hell. And then my ex is sitting downstairs. It's just me and her in the house. And this is, after a long night of drinking. She's downstairs smoking or whatever. And I'm like upstairs, getting, changing into pajamas or whatever. And I see, the tarantula, messing with it. And I like went downstairs. I'm like, fucking thing bit me. She's like, what bit you? The fucking spider. She's like, how did the spider bite you? And she finds out what I'm doing. She's like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
And I'm
you
like,
deserve
yeah,
it.
yeah. And looking back on it, yeah, I probably did. I was like literally flicking it in the face with my hands, like, kind of like shooing it,
Yeah.
kind of like egging it on.
that
And
motion,
yeah, and it
yeah.
just fucking put two fucking hands up, two front fucking, and then just two fangs right in my fucking pointer finger. And I was just like,
All right, so like walk me through like how long did it hurt for?
oh God. It stung. Like, it's like any sort of sting you would get
Like,
from
yeah,
a
like
bee.
a bee sting?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Except it's like amplified by
It's, like,
probably like maybe
irritating
4 or
and
5
sore.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it initially happened, even when I was drinking, it hurt like hell. I mean, it feels like two fangs are basically, poking you in the hand.
Right.
And then it lingers because of course there's like poison,
That's what I was gonna
venom
say.
in there and all
You're
that
right.
stuff. And then it itched and my hand swelled up a little bit, took some ibuprofen. But yeah, it hurt probably for a good 5 days after that.
Shit.
Yeah, learned my lesson real good that time.
Yep. Never been.
Never messed with him again though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what I was like, dude. This thing's gonna. It was sitting on my chest. I was like, dude, I'm gonna fucking. This thing's gonna bite me. I'm gonna smack it off. And then
I give it about good probably 4 or 5 whacks before it bit me though. So you got a little bit of leeway there.
Well,
As long as you're not like
Well, I was just gonna swat it off my chest because my asshole friend just put it on there without me even even really know what's going on. I mean, you were fucking with it, so like.
yeah, purposely fucking with
You
it to
made
get
your
it to
own
bite me
bed, yeah.
probably. No, I just
Yeah.
wanted to eat.
This one
I
was
wanted
just
it
like-
to eat a cricket. Was all I wanted to
what
get
else?
out of it.
What else freaked me out is that when I was playing with it, there was a little bit of like web like hanging out of its butt, and my buddy knew that I was kind of freaked out. But I'm like, okay, I can handle this. This is actually it's being cool and crawling up my arm. It's on my arm, and he starts pulling web from its butt, like clowns do with fucking ribbons, like endless ribbons.
Okay.
He was
yeah, I
pulling
would've
the
been like,
fucking
fuck
web.
that.
And I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, and I'm just standing there with this spider. I'm like, quit fucking doing that. It's going to fucking bite me. I was like, I swear to God, this thing fucking bites me. I'm punching you right in the face, dude. don't. I was like, quit, knock it off. And he's just drunk and laughing. He's like, ha 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 ha, just pulling web out of its butt. And I was like, I was really worried for a second, but nothing ever happens. I'm good.
Yeah, I got bit because I'm an idiot.
I know that we had a little roundabout here, but I did actually want to circle back to the Evil Dead series where we began, to get to like the remake. How did you feel about that?
The remake?
Because that essentially, it was a group of friends as it was in the original. It's just, done better.
I really think, as far as like I feel like the storyline was very believable.
Mm-hmm. They did change things because like the little sister, like she was like a junkie.
Yeah, she was addicted to heroin, and they're out in this cabin, so she can detox or whatever. So she does, the same thing where she gets into the woods and she gets, raped by the tree or whatever, or the vines, and everybody just thinks she's going crazy. Mm-hmm. Which, by that standpoint, I mean, I've been around a couple people that have, kicked the habit or whatever, and, that paranoia and that fear is there. So when they did the remake, I thought they did it extremely well. Mm-hmm. Because I went into it very skeptical, because naturally I do, because I'm such a huge horror fan. And I went and saw it with my friend Ty, and I'm just like, this better not suck, this better not do this, but the whole storyline is so believable, where they just think, okay, she's a junkie, she's sweating because she's kicking the habit, she's getting paranoid because she's kicking the habit.
Right.
And they're just like, well, just let her detox or whatever. And then, they find out that everything's gone drastically wrong. Yeah. At one point, everything comes to it where it gets beyond the detox mode, where it's more like something else is going on here. Where I feel that is the trap that they set for it, was that, in most horror movies you can see the signs, like, why didn't this guy see this coming? Why didn't this person see this coming?
Again.
And then,
unless you're in the situation, yeah.
Unless you're in the situation. But with her, the early signs of possession or whatever were basically main detox signs. Mm-hmm. And then when it came to the point where they were like, well, this is, something major's going on, it's already too late.
Right, and that's what I think was a really cool idea, like a good spin to put on it. Because, like, that's something, like, just as you said, you're like, no, she's fucking going through detox and acting like a crazy person. Oh, shit, things are actually happening? We're fucked.
We're like, okay, so we have a huge franchise to live up to. How are we gonna possibly live up to this franchise? We got this storyline. We got, and they took the Sam Raimi, like, camera views and camera angles and all that stuff. So where are we gonna take this to really, live up to the hype of this movie? And they were just like, we're just gonna make it one of the most brutal horror movies that we've ever made. We're literally just gonna drive it home with nothing but intense scenes, which I thought was amazing.
They're so good.
So many intense scenes.
And the thing is, the way you just said that is that we have to do these Sam Raimi, like, different scenes. I mean, it was Sam that still did this.
Yeah.
If it was anybody else, they wouldn't be able to pull it off, as far as, like, when you have somebody else that's doing somebody else's movie as a reboot, a lot of times it doesn't fucking pull off very well.
No, it doesn't pan out like that.
If anybody but Sam were to do it, then it would have been fucked. But it was Sam.
Yeah.
Go on, though.
So, anyway, so how do you make, like, Evil Dead a true horror movie? Like, a true, no comedy, because Ash, of course, is not into it. So, Ash is 95% of the comedy that comes into that.
That is important to note, that there is nobody named Ash.
There's nobody you can replace to make that Ash character. So what they did was they eliminated the Ash character, and they were like, well, where do we go from here? Well, we take it to do an extreme horror movie, and we want to make something that's truly scary, truly intense. And they nailed it. I thought they, no pun intended with the nail gun scene that's in that movie.
Right, yeah.
But, front to back, I feel like the scenes were very dramatic, very traumatic.
There's the girl slicing her fucking tongue open with, like, the broken mirror.
Well, let's start with the Mia character that is the girl who's basically going through this rehab or whatever.
Right.
And, not a lot of people, or some people might know this, but it all takes place in Michigan. She's wearing Michigan State, sweater, and her brother comes into town to help her detox. So it's this very heartfelt, like, emotional connection that they both have already. She even brings her, like, grandpa, which is her childhood, the dog or whatever,
right,
up to help her get through this.
And I like how they also had her have, like, the necklace like her brother gave her,
Yeah,
which is like a throwback to Evil Dead 2, which I also enjoyed.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden, they think she's going through shock, and it very, very quickly comes to she's not going through shock.
Yeah.
And that comes to basically the scene where she goes to sedate her. Well, even the nerdy history teacher boyfriend guy in there is the first guy that brings it to light, like, hey, something's not going on here. There's things in this book, which they find in the basement of there, which is the Necronomicon, which, if you saw the movie, in the beginning of the movie, there's a sacrifice that goes on down there in order to get rid of the demons. They light a girl on fire, dump her in gasoline. But he sees it first, and he's like, there's something not going right here. Nobody else sees it. Everybody's kind of brushing it off as, it's the detox, whatever. What you're saying is kind of crazy.
Right.
And then they find out she goes into, like, a seizure, and right after that, she goes to get the drugs to sedate her out of the kitchen or out of the bathroom, and then she ends up cutting her face with glass. So very quickly it takes a very, very dark turn.
Yeah. And that's why I think, too, like, it's really cool is, like, how those scenes went. They're very memorable. You know, like, and even, like, with the bread cutter.
Yeah.
And the girl's sitting there, and she's, like, sawing off, like, her arm, or like, she's about to, like, cut her arm with that bread cutter, and then there's that deadite hanging out of the fucking floor going, cut her off! Fucking cut her off! Like, cut her off! You know, I'm like, this is fucking gnarly, man, just sawing off your arm with the fucking bread cutter.
Yeah,
like those, like, electric bread cutters. I think they did, like, overall, like, Sam fucking killed it.
Yeah, I think that movie is very high up there in one of my favorite horror movies that's ever came out. Just by the sheer, like, the characters were very well casted. Like I said, the Mia character in that movie, who is amazing. Her dialogue in it's very heartfelt.
Yeah, she did a great job.
Between her and her brother. And then, of course, the scenes you can barely even watch with your eyes at moments where the girl's cutting her face with glass and,
cutting her tongue in half.
Her tongue in half. The guy's shooting everybody with the nail gun.
Yeah.
Everything, from front to back, where the truck rolls on her arm and she has to tear her arm off.
Fuck, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, so not only one person loses an arm, second person loses an arm as well.
I think they had to be a little throw into it as well, just having, like, limbs missing, like, the arms for, like, a little throwback to Ash.
But it wasn't like an intense throw in your face.
Yeah,
thing.
It's just real subtle. This is just crazy shit that's happening, but
yeah, it blends very well with the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, even with, like, how he brings her back to life and she lives and the sky, starts bleeding red. I mean, I think that all the way around, I mean, that's one of the most, if you were to do a remake of a movie, I think that's one of the best ones that I've seen come out.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, like, in Sam, since he did that, even before, he's made multiple movies still directing. Some writing, some not, horror related and not. Drag Me to Hell was one that he did. How do you feel about that?
Drag Me to Hell was great for I guess, like, an old, like, Evil Dead throwback. I think it's very watchable. I think it's a great movie. Just because Sam Raimi did it. I don't think it would have been nearly as good with the storyline that was given.
Right.
If it didn't have, like, the same dead-eyed characters in it and the same camera angles and, the dialogue
it makes
with it.
me think of, like, it's like a mix of, like Evil Dead meets, Evil Dead meets Thinner.
Yeah.
Because you have, like, the old, like, gypsy lady and all of that. Like, that's what it feels like, a combo of those two. And one of my, like scenes that I remember the most is, like, with that old lady, and she doesn't have any teeth, it's just her gums, and when she's just gnawing on that girl's chin.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine just, like, laying there and this old lady's, like, freaking out on you and on top of you and, like, just gnawing on your chin with her gums, like, and all of that. This is also what I really love about Sam, is that his, like, blood and slime, like, all of that he does, it's such the perfect, like, color and texture and everything. Like, when she's, like, pulling her mouth from that chin, like, that stretchiness of, like
yeah.
that, I'm like, oh man, it's weird and gross but perfect all in the same way.
Yeah, it's those visual effects that
Yeah.
they created way back in the day with Evil Dead. I mean,
Yeah.
he still carries that through. I mean, that's basically his claim to fame.
Yeah.
Other than, Spider-Man. But we're going to table that discussion, pretend like it doesn't exist.
Right.
But he's created that, like, all through. I mean, he's used those same, like, camera angles, the same special effects, the same absurd amount of blood vomit since, the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. So that's kind of like where he's just kind of gradually realized where his niche is, but he's perfected it over time.
I mean, do you remember what I really love is in Army of Darkness, when in the beginning when, like, the pit scene's happening, and then once Ash is getting raised out of that pit, and those spike balls come together, and when all of that fucking blood,
I know, comes spilling out
just
over the village.
launches all the way up in the air, and then just fucking comes down on everybody standing around that fucking pit. I was like, just like the amount of it, the color, and then just watching it land on everybody, soaking
And
everybody.
everybody's just standing there like,
yeah, it's like standing at
very silent.
at being
Yeah.
like at Cedar Point, like when you're standing next to like one of those rides, like the water slides, and like you're like at the bridge, like Snake River Falls
Yeah,
or whatever.
Snake River Falls is
and
what I
you're
was
just
gonna
getting
say.
soaked. Like that's how they all got hit with just blood, and then just standing there, just soaked. And
Yeah,
I was like,
it's they're all very still, and I think
Yeah.
the facial expressions in that scene are just hilarious too. They're all just standing there, just like very ghost faced,
Yeah,
very like,
like-
what the fuck is
Yeah.
going on right now?
yeah, that was. It's such a great series overall. I mean, I don't hate the first one by any means. I still will watch it
I
from
never
time
said
to
that I
time.
hated it. I said I
Well,
could do without
no,
it.
and I know that. I know, and I'm not saying that you do. I'm just saying, like, it's just overall. I mean, they're all great in their own way. I agree that one could be on its own, but still. And then just over the past couple of years, then they had the Ash versus Evil Dead series.
Yeah, Ash vs. Evil Dead. I think I went into it with stars being very like pessimistic on it, of course, because naturally when you make a excellent movie or make any movie into a TV show, it's gonna suck. For the most part.
Do you think this was a good move or a bad move on like Sam and Bruce's part?
I felt that originally I thought it was a bad move, but if for anybody out there that's not seen Ash vs. Evil Dead, it is an amazing show. It is basically Evil Dead reincarnated every single episode.
Yeah.
The cast members are cast very well.
Mm-hmm.
The storyline is spot on. The comedy of it is just
That
very.
girl's a total babe, by the way.
Oh, she total babe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like that, when you bring Sam and you bring Bruce into a show like that and you ask for their input and they're like, well, we have to do it the same exact way we've always done it. It just, and, Bruce Campbell has not missed a step ever in his
No.
career.
Nope.
I mean, in Ash vs. Evil Dead, he is the same guy as he was
He
in
knows-
Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. And I'm honestly, I wonder if that's actually what he's really, really like amongst friends, because you hear him talk and he's kind of, Bruce Campbell, Ash character, but you kind of wonder if that's a show or if that's actually who he really is, because that's who he is in every single, episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Right.
And when you read interviews and you see interviews with him, that's how he talks.
So, and this is, I'm not really like a fanboy where I'm like, oh, I really want to meet this person. I really want to meet this person. I was at a young age, and the people that I did meet were just complete dog shit people. So at a young age, I learned not to meet your heroes or role models.
'cause you don't want to have that. Yeah.
So Bruce Campbell was always someone that I was always like, man, I really want to meet him. And probably like 4 or 5 years ago, he was doing a book tour for If Chins Could Talk.
Yeah.
Which I have. If you want to read it
I've read
sometime.
it. It's
okay,
awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So he was doing a book signing over at the I forget what the bookstore used to be over in Crocker Park, but he was doing a book signing
Barnes
there.
and Noble.
Yeah, he was doing a book signing there and Q&A. And I had planned on going, but then I ended up having to fucking work, so I didn't get to make it in. So I was like, man, that sucks. Like, I really wanted to meet him, or at least, just kind of be in the same room and see him in person with my own eyes,
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not the kind of person that's like, hey, can I have your autograph? But I have a few friends that are like stupid horror. Like, I mean, I know you're crazy horror fanatic. Like, my buddy Dave might either be at your level or maybe a little bit more. Like, it's that crazy. But like, him and his wife have met Bruce, and
Please tell me he's the coolest dude he's ever met.
he pretty much treated us like, okay, oh, you guys want a picture, autograph? Okay, see ya. Next. Okay, you. Next. And then they're like, well, we even like stood over to like the side and we're like trying to like ask him questions. It was like 1 or 2 word answers, and like not really like it just almost seemed like it was more of a chore to be there than to being like, hey, and hang out with my fans. Which, to be fair, Yep. It was. I get it. He's been having to do this Ash character Q&A and book signings and what have yous for 20, 30 years. I can understand it can get old, but at the same time, it's like,
Give it a little bit of time.
Like, you need to. I mean, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Like, people like. He's got other shitty budget movies, and again, I mean
Bubba
shitty in a good way. Since you're just gonna, mark that on me earlier. I mean shitty in a good way. Bubba Hotep, great fucking film. Those of you who've never seen it,
2002, right?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right. Bruce Campbell plays the role of like actual Elvis. He gets tired of living that lifestyle, so he has a contest to see who's the best Elvis impersonator. He finds somebody, says, "Hey, buddy, you're playing your shows. How about we switch roles? You can pretend to be me and live my lifestyle as being the real Elvis. I can just kind of chill out and not have to worry about dealing with fans and shit anymore." Well, time passes by. He's old and now living in a nursing home. He's telling everybody that he's like all the nurses that he's the real Elvis, and they're like, "Yeah, sure, you're just some fucking senile old man." Guess what? This guy over here thinks he's JFK, which is a black guy in a wheelchair. And he's telling everybody that he's JFK. So like then what ends up turning out is that this bus is transferring like mummies and shit like that to like a museum. Thunderstorm happens, bus crashes, the mummy falls out. Then the mummy finds its way to the nursing home, where it starts sucking the souls out of all the people there, but through their assholes. So in which case now the real Elvis and black JFK have to like save the nursing home, and take down this mummy. So again, hilarious concept, but I feel like a lot of people don't know about that movie. That Maniac Cop and probably a whole bunch of that I can't even think of right now. But it's just you just don't have to be like fucking asshole, like.
No, and yeah, especially. I mean, maybe it is wear and tear. I mean, people, even me, I can't even say what I'd be like when I'm like 55, 20 years down the road. I always kid around with people and say that I'm going to be the guy that's yelling at kids to get off my fucking lawn.
Yeah, I always make the same jokes too.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it does happen, You never know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's some sort of having his personal privacy invaded for so long. It's, made him bitter. Maybe it's something I don't know about. As a fan, I would love to see him be more of, granted, you'd want to see him be the person you idolized growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it doesn't go down that road. So maybe I can just understand it at a certain point where, your personal space has been invaded enough. Because as people from day to day, we hate having our personal space invaded.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's just me. I'm not fucking anybody. We are people, of course,
right,
but
we're
you're
like
just fucking Tony. I'm just
yeah.
fucking Josh. Imagine being like fucking Bruce Campbell and having a bunch of fucking idiots like, being like, oh my god, it's Bruce Campbell, let me get a selfie with you every single day of your life.
Yeah. And so I was saying, like, I get it. Like, I'm sure it can get very tiring.
Oh,
But,
it get
like,
exhausting.
It's one thing to be out on the street trying to get like a hot dog from like a hot dog cart guy.
But knowing that's your job to actually go in there and
you purposely are on this fucking tour to do a meet and greet and signing books that you just fucking came out with. If you don't want to do it, don't have a tour. Put your fucking book out, and then you're done.
Yeah.
But then obviously they're like, oh well, you're gonna make more money, and there's like, ugh.
All right, I'll
guess
fucking
so.
gotta go to fucking Cleveland, Ohio. God damn it.
Yeah. And I watched the first 2 seasons. Those are fantastic. I haven't got a chance to watch the 3rd season. Have you watched it?
Oh yeah, no, I'm caught up all the way.
Okay.
But they did cancel it.
Yeah, that's
Unfortunately, Ash will no longer be playing the Ash character. So
yeah, he said that he was just retiring it completely, which is probably a good thing. And I know they had 2 games, Evil Dead games, for like PlayStation 2. I played the first one and it was fun as fuck.
Do you know he's Ash in Mortal Kombat 11?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard. Yeah.
So yeah, other than he's retired as a live person, but he's still doing like video game stuff. On top of it.
Voiceovers.
Yeah,
and shit,
voiceovers and
well,
shit
I guess
like that.
apparently he doesn't have to deal with the public that he dreads so much.
Hey man, I'm not a big fan of the public either, so.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap for this episode.
Wrapping
Unless
it
there's
up.
anything that you have to throw in there.
No, I think we can tackle that next week.
Okay. Cool.
Good.
Well, again, I'm Tony.
I'm Josh.
And we are Creepin'
Creepin'
It
It
Real.
Real.
Thanks for listening, guys.
All right, have a good one.
See you around for the next episode. Bye-bye.